Hey, what's up, good people of the world? So, today I'm going to do a video that a lot of you have been asking for. It is a analysis and sort of explanation of my fantasy for piano trio. I'm definitely going to get to some harmonic relativity and orchestration videos soon, but I thought this would be a nice change of pace because to my knowledge, I've never done an analysis video on chamber music. It's always been, orchestration, huge ensemble, so I thought it'd be interesting to, go over how do you make the most of a small combination of instruments in a more intimate setting. So if you haven't listened to the piece before, feel free to listen to it. Fantasy for Piano Trio, jury read-through. I had the privilege of performing the piano part pretty messily with some fantastic musicians, actually, the principal players of the Greenville Symphony Orchestra, and they just did an amazing job. But yeah, if you haven't listened to the piece, I recommend you go listen to it so you become familiar with it. I have a score video and everything. Okay, so if you've listened to it, you've probably figured out that it is somewhat sonata form, very loose sonata form, because basically I present a theme, and it has a lively sort of character, bum bum ba da dum ba dum bum bim bim ba da dum dee dum ba, right? Kind of a very sprightly theme, and then I have a secondary theme in another key, and it's actually, instead of the dominant, it's a tritone away. The first key is in E minor, and then the second one is B flat, and then the secondary theme which comes in is this Gershwini la da dee 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 bum ba da dun dun dee 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 dee, a bit longer tune, more spun out. So they're introduced and sort of exposed. There's a little bit of development, which is really where I differ from sonata form, but then I start playing with them and combining them together, and then finally the recapitulation is where the theme comes back, but it doesn't come back in its original time signature. It comes back in 12/8. And that's the interesting thing about this, is that I actually originally conceived of that melody in 12/8, and I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I took that melody and sort of permuted it into another metrical box, then, so you thought that the 4/4 version, bum bum ba da dum bum, is its full version, but it actually isn't. It's dum ba da bum 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 ba da ba dum boom ba dum ba da bum bum bum. So it almost feels like its development is a more natural version of what it wants to be, if that makes sense. It's kind of an interesting idea. It's probably been done before, but not as far as I know. So anyway, so yeah, we'll just go ahead and start off with this introductory section. Okay, so before the theme starts at measure 5, there is this imitative canon type of thing. It's not really a canon, it's more just imitative, where the melody, bum bum ba da dum, just that first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that first 5-note motive is sort of turned into an introduction. So the piano just has bass, has the melody, and then a little bit of chords later, so I'll just play it by itself. Alright, and then the cello comes in, imitates the melody, and then goes into counterpoint. Alright, and then the violin, same thing, but a little bit later. Sorry for the bad quality MIDI, but it's clearer than Note Performer in terms of pitch when it comes to a chamber instrument. So then all together. Alright, and then with the bass. We have another round, kind of leading up to it. So with the piano, and then it goes into octaves, I think double octaves, with the main tune. And then I'll show you the cello and violin. I want to show you the individual lines because I take great care in making sure they're all as individually melodic as possible. The cello takes on a more bass function, since both hands on the piano are occupied with the tune. And then the violin is basically what's holding the harmony here. With this double stop. As you notice, this low G down here is an open string, so they're only having to finger the E. So the harmony is really by the right? So the harmony is really taken over by the string instruments there, with a few counter lines, dum bum bum bum, which you'll notice, you know, complements contrapuntally the melody very well. Right, imperfect consonances, rhythm separate at separate times. And you'll notice again, I talk about these principles all the time, but like when the melody remains a little bit stagnant, when it has a sort of chill out point, bum bum ba bum, and the piano, then the cellist really has a chance to go. All right, and then we go into a little bit of a development. So it's basically just sort of a commentary on the melody. So, and you remember this bum ba bum, this sort of last coda, that's really what's being developed here, because that melody, let me just go into panorama view here, that melody, bum ba bum, that little motive serves as the end of this phrase. So I'm sort of commenting or extrapolating on this cadence, if that makes any sense. Anyway, in this case, the texture is changed up, the harmony is in bass, is in the piano. Kind of our arpeggiated figure, and then some counterpoint with the cello. Right, so they kind of start out in homophony and then go into separate areas, and then this area right here is pretty complicated. So the main melody is in the violin. So, and then the cello ascends in contrary motion with the violin, and then they sort of come together in thirds at the end for this little cadence. And this type of cadence is actually very similar to a section in my piece, Wind in the Wood. And then this piano has this big run and then a little flourishing cadence at the end, which is really just an extension of this. And then, of course, the harmony is taken over by the piano. So all this together sounds like this. All right, now we have a new section. Now the melody's developed. And then we start doing metrical development. So we got a little 3/4 measure here. 1 dum ba dum ba dum. Okay, so in this particular section, first what the violin does, it sort of has this taking the theme going along in imperfect consonance with the piano, and in this first section, and then the piano sort of takes over the harmony. Bum, 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 bum. And notice how the piano is syncopated on the offbeat, so that allows it to have rhythmic time to speak and not interfere with the violin, which is important because in this particular area you'll notice that the piano and the violin are at a very similar register, so we got to make sure that they have room to speak. So then there's a bit of imitation here because this is imitated in the cello, and then that motive is sort of permuted in pizzicato without the dotted rhythm while that happens. And then the same thing happens with the cello, another imitation, while the violin, right? Okay, and now we have another development of the theme. Okay, stark modulation here. We're in like G minor Dorian here, and so we got this 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So kind of an interesting another metric modulation. So and harmonically toying with it. So, and of course the strings have harmony at this point, so again contrasting, you know, I try to switch them up all the time. Sometimes strings have harmony, sometimes they have melody, they kind of go back and forth and they don't just have the same thing the whole time. So harmonic as well as contrapuntal function, whereas the primary harmonic function is in the bass of the piano along with the melody in the right hand. Alright, so and then this new section where the strings now take over the melody, and then together, now we get this cadence, and now finally we get our B theme. So first off, the melody almost seems like a counter melody, because the real focus in this thing, because it's up in its tenor register and it just has a nice stringy sound, is the cello. Da 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 da, la la da da. Da da da, boom 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 bum bum bum. Excuse me, bad humming. But that's really the focus at this moment. But the main theme, which we don't realize is the main theme, is of course in the piano, and you can see the bass line has a little bit different rhythm from the melody, so they complement each other. And then the cello, with its thing, is like this. And then it goes up to the 7th degree of the scale, like la da da da, dominant, wanting us to lead to the actual theme. And we still don't get it in its full splendor yet, kind of saving it, because you might remember, if you've heard the piece before, there's this huge climax in the 12/8 section where the theme comes out. So I don't want to give away too much of it. But anyway, this together sounds like this. And notice how the rhythms complement each other. Alright, and now to contrast the triplets, we get these 4 things. It's kind of similar thing in the cello, but instead of ascending, now it's descending. Takes on a bass line function, and the melody is in the upper register of the piano in octaves, as well as the lower register of the violin, along with a single notes in there. And this sort of technique, having a bit of the harmony but not the full chord, Debussy used it a lot, you know? Gives it a sort of dreamy, dry sound. That was from Reverie, which I actually have a performance of on my channel, but yeah. And then it goes into full chords later, and then the violin sort of takes on its own kind of line. I'll just play the violin and the piano by itself. Transitory material. And then the bass line in the piano is very simple. Again, when you start doing complicated stuff, you really need to keep the bass line simple. So I know I said always try to write a good bass line, and you should. You know, even this. You know, that it still has a decent contour, even though it's very simple. But you need to be wise when you choose, because remember, the more you start messing with the bass line contrapuntally, the more you're going to get chord inversions. And the more you get chord inversions, the more the upper partials of the overtone series don't reinforce each other, and it gets a muddier sound. So it all depends upon what you're going for. In this case, I wanted very lyrical, and the melody, the bass line was just fairly melodic over here, you know. So at this point, it doesn't necessarily need to be super melodic. And then we have this big counter line with the piano, this kind of inspired, suddenly goes into sextuplets and then back down. And then it turns into like 3-part counterpoint at the end, and then we go into this later section. I'll just play it by itself. So now we have a fairly complicated section. So we have basically a development of the melody. The rhythm is the same, but the contour is different. So instead of ba-dum, boom, ba-dum, we have this. And I don't know if you know, I don't know if you knew, any of you have watched my harmonic relativity video, but this is actually a perfect exemplification of one of those sequence chord progressions that I demonstrated in a video. I don't know if you remember that, but this is me using that progression. Okay, so yeah, so the melody is in the upper section of the upper section of the piano, as well as the bass line, which is kind of interesting. This is kind of the Verdi technique where you have the melody on, and then in between you have the harmony along with some counter lines. So kind of listen to this. This is a pretty intricate part writing here. So pretty intricate and some dissonance that's resolved. But on top of that, we have these other counter lines with the upper string instruments. And again, when this has movement, this is being still. And now we get the full theme. Okay, so now we get the main melody up high in the violin, and down here we get this counter line. And this is a counter line that I really spent quite a while to get just right. I really wanted this to be like a great counter line, so I tried hard to make it sound nice. It worked well contrapuntally as well as sounding nice. So it's da da da, li da da, la da 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 da, li la da da, li da da, li di di di. So I really tried to make it have like as melodic a contour as possible and just seem inevitable. So they combine like this. And then, of course, the harmony is in the piano, just very simple because I want all of the focus to be on these upper string lines, so. Etc. So, and then at this point we have both the upper string lines with the main melody, and then the counter line is in octaves with the piano, which starts out like before, but then goes on to something different. So it sounds like this. How I don't make the violin go up there yet, you know, because again I want to save that for the very end, so they just kind of stay there for a moment, and then we have this huge cello line, which is reminiscent of what happened with the piano over here, if you remember, kind of a similar tonal feeling. So this big climax. And you'll notice that this right here, boom, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum. So, and then it goes to a different note. But so it's a obscured rhythmic development. And then they all take a harmonic function, and they have this big cadence. So, and then we go to the next section. So, and the timing, if you want to hear the correct timing, you can listen to the actual recording. But So now at this point, this is really where the development begins. This is where we start messing with stuff and combining things together. So yeah, and I just wanted to talk about economy too. I think it says a lot for a composer. Like Beethoven, for example, the amount of mileage you can get out with a single motive or a single melody. So that's really what I attempted to do here. Is I really wanted to make this entire 7-8 minute piece out of nothing but those two melodies. Okay, so pretty much all of the musical material from this stemmed from those ideas. So we first start out with a similar sort of introduction, like from the beginning, which goes a little bit quicker than normal, of course. And once we get back into the theme, which before the theme was on the piano, so now we hear the theme on the strings. Okay, but this is the first time we're hearing the full theme on the strings, and we have this nice little counter melody with the piano, which you can just listen to with the melody. Works nice together. Right, and then just simple bass line. Right, so it goes like this. Okay, so for this section right here, it's really just another permuted development of the theme, which starts out in counterpoint with the cello, because the cello is really what has the finishing main part of the tune there, but because the violin's on top, that's your focus, and that's counterpoint. And then they sort of go into unison at the end, and then of course the piano has harmony and then has a little bit of the counter line here. Alright? So, and then we get this which is probably, I would guess, I would say it's fairly new musical material. But again, I think this is sort of a development of the theme, or it's a development of the development of the theme. But anyway, so yeah, so we get this little figure. Okay, and then of course our little ostinato bass, and on top of that we have pizzicato in the strings accompaniment. Right, with a little video gamey stuff, and then of course the melody switches off and goes to cello. And then this sort of development, which are like, hey, is this related to the material? No, not really. Well, it actually cadences with the material. So basically what I did is I took our melody, or a version of our melody, and made it the cadence of something new. So that's another way that you can develop your melodic material. Alright, and at this point I'm like, okay, I want to do something that no one is expecting. Okay, so I kind of go into this triplet, weird, sort of magical texture, like, what the heck is happening? Okay, so I'm sure you noticed there, this is a kind of permuted version of the theme, but when the theme really comes back is during this 5/8 section where we have this crazy ostinato going on, which is really hard to keep a tempo when performing. And then the cello, which sort of has these excuse me, first inversion major 7th chord just moving down chromatically. Right? And then alright, and then we have this new development in 7/8. So and then commentary. So but this is along with just a accompaniment. Transition, and then commentary, and then the other melody, but disfigured, and then another cadence. Alright, and this is where we really start playing with this theme contrapuntally. So this is where I just went crazy with the counterpoint. Alright, so I'll have you listen to the individual sections. Okay, because they really tried to make them as contrapuntally individually beautiful as possible. And then counterline. Right, all very melodic. And then this violin, which starts out simple, but then turns into a more florid line. And actually, this is kind of an interesting story. This part right here, that line, I couldn't get it to work so many times. I just couldn't get it to work. And actually, I was laying in bed. It was like 4 a.m, and this contrapuntal solution just popped into my head. And so I ran out of bed and wrote it into the score, and then went back to sleep. So that's actually, I just came up with this in the middle of the night off the spur of the moment. So so yeah, and then the piano just really takes over what the cello is doing. Right, so even though it's a accompanimental figure, it still has decent melodic contour, of course. So really, there, I'll put it this way. What am I trying to say? Goodness me. The MIDI doesn't really do it justice, so I just want to show you the I just want to, now that we've talked about the counterpoint in the individual lines, I just want to go ahead and play it. Just that one particular section, just so you can see how it's supposed to sound. And then we have some more transitory material before we go into the ending with great intensity. So we have this kind of planing thing. Sibelius can never play these glissandos, right? Right, which leads in sort of almost Pirates of the Caribbean-esque. And you might notice this isn't just some random material. This goes back to you know, it's over here. I don't know if you remember it. Yeah, right here, remember? So again, I'm using existing material, I'm not creating new stuff. Right? So that is what we're using to create this this ending section. Alright, so then we get into the fun section, 12/8. Let me go ahead and turn this cello into the left ear so we can hear it well. Alright, so pretty simple. The melody is just dramatically in 12/8 now. With this counter line. And the violin as well as that. And the bass line simplifies for a second, just to give it a second. And then there's this transitory material, this sort of tremolo, which goes into a new key. Right? And then this cello, which starts out as an ostinato type thing, turns into a counterline later. Right, so really epic, nice, cool stuff. So, and then we get this major seventh kind of material returning. Remember? Right, and then we get this development of the theme, which sort of plays around imitatively with upper strings. And then another transition. Right, so we're basically just developing the crap out of the melody. New section. Now it's in the bass. Right? So for this particular section we have melody / harmonic accompaniment, really dramatic tremolo in the upper strings, and then the cello, which is based it has sections of the melody, but it starts out simple instead of going bum boom bum, it goes da da da, so it goes up the octave there, but the melody is of course in the bass. Alright, so and then we have this transitory section again. This is one of my favorite parts of the piece right here. Right, so this crazy stuff, and then we go into this huge thing here, right? We're just leading up because we haven't played the B theme yet, so we're waiting for this B theme to come. So, and then here we get the theme, and it's just in violin and cello, super high up, unison, espressivo, fortissimo, and the piano just has these epic arpeggios. Right? And again, the MIDI is just gonna ruin this. And then when the theme comes in again, we have these big chords for the counterline. So I'm going to play it with the full video in a second. But then we have this sort of almost trailer, film score trailer. Dun dun ba da dum ba, right? Modulation, back to our key, E minor. Turn into a cadence. Right? Extended cadence, and then finally the tune. Alright, and that's the piece. So I'll go ahead and play the last part just with the with the video. Theme. transition. Theme. And then this big transition to the melody. Excuse my messy piano playing. There you go. So yeah, that is my fantasy for piano trio. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of the development of the piece, and just kind of exemplifies, I hope, the philosophy of making the most of little amounts of material. I think it's like 7, 8-minute piece, and literally pretty much every bar is derived from those two pieces of melodic material. So there's a lot that you can do if you're creative, and it unifies your music too. It makes it seem like a story with characters that you're developing, rather than just going from one thing to the next that it's seemingly unrelated. There's also a lot of counterpoint, so I hope it kind of exemplifies some of the things I've been talking about in my counterpoint videos, in terms of using lots of imperfect consonances and having the rhythms happen at separate times, as well as trying to make their individual contours as pleasing and beautiful as possible. Also, textural variety. I think when you're in a small when you have a small amount of instruments like this, you don't have as much freedom to change up combinations. In other words, if you're writing an orchestral piece, and you're like, oh, I want to change up the texture here, well, that's easy. You have tons of instruments at your disposal. You can be like, well, I'll just go to winds instead of brass, or I'll just shift things around. But when you only have 3 instruments, you really have to be creative with what gets melody, what gets harmony, what has certain rhythms, try to give them as much variety as possible. Don't just have the strings doing melodic stuff the whole time. Also give them some accompanimental stuff, Just have as much textural variety as possible. And if you want to study some great chamber music, study Maurice Ravel's chamber music. His piano trio is fabulous. His string quartet, especially his second string quartet, as well as Allegro and Introduction for harp and strings, are all exquisite examples of counterpoint, part writing, as well as just utilizing the full potential of what those instrumental combinations can do. His orchestration, even in intimate settings like that, is just immaculate. So I would highly recommend you check out some of his work. But anyway, yeah, I hope you got something. Hope you got something out of this video. I'm definitely going to try to make some more harmonic relativity and orchestration videos soon. So stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys later.